Our next guest is here to take us on an insightful journey from Earth to the edge of what we understand and back again. But before he joins us, let's all take a look.
Chris Hadfield. He's a man of many titles, but none more notable than the commander of the International Space Station. On Earth, Chris has spent his life captivating not only Canada, but the entire world, with educational videos, far-out photography, and one-of-a-kind concerts with a view. After 35 years amongst the stars, Hadfield is still leading the charge, protecting our planet and galaxy, and connecting where we've been to where we're going. Please welcome to the Elevate main stage, Commander Chris Hadfield.
Hello, everybody. So, speed of light. It's incredible how fast light travels. You can put it in numbers. It's like 300,000 kilometers a second. Like if you just count, I don't know how you count seconds, like one potato or one steamboat or something like that. Let's say one potato. In one potato, light goes around the world 7.5 times. 7.5 times around our planet in the time that you can say one potato. So when I go outside and I look up at light coming across the universe at me, I think about that incredible number, 186,000 miles a second. I love this, by the way. This is obviously the Milky Way. That's our galaxy. There's so many stars that they smear together. You know, it's like milky smear across the sky. And someone took their camera and put it on a really clever mount so that instead of just having the sky rotate by, they fixed it relative to the big black hole that's in the center of the Milky Way, and then they let the Earth turn underneath it. It's gorgeous. But this is what our Milky Way looks like if you look at it from the side. So how big is it? It is about 100,000 light years across. So if you took your cell phone out, and there's that cool feature on your cell phone where you can make the light come on. If you turned on your light and you held it up at the sky, and I'm going to save my battery here, and pointed it up at the sky, it would take 100,000 years for that light to get from one side to the other side. And how many stars are there? About 250 billion stars just in the Milky Way. These are big numbers. So everybody imagine an apple. It's easy to imagine an apple, right? You could just close your eyes and picture, I don't know, 10 apples. 10. That's an easy number of fingers you got. I can easily picture 10 apples. How about 100 apples? Can you imagine 100 apples? You can open your eyes. That's easy, right? How about 1,000 apples? Can you imagine what 1,000 apples looks like? I think I can. I think my brain is good enough for how about 10,000 apples? How about 20, what's the biggest number that you can actually intuitively get in your head or imagine? And I've thought about it. I don't think I can go past 20,000. If I had 20,000 apples or 30,000 apples, I can't tell the difference. So what's a million or a billion? And one of the ways I try and remember the difference in the size, because they sound the same, million, billion, one letter, how different are they? But if you, let's go back to potatoes. If you started sitting in your chair and counting potatoes, 1 potato, 2 potatoes, you're just counting seconds, right? How long would it take you, how many potatoes to get to a million? You would be sitting in your chair in Meridian Hall for 12 days. No pee breaks, no food. 12 days, 1 potato, before you got to 1 million potatoes. 12 days. How about if you were counting the number of seconds in a billion? You would be sitting in that chair for 32 years. A billion is a huge number. And so when you look at the solar system and you think that there are 250 billion stars just in our galaxy alone. And by the way, we live over here. That's us over there on the side. You are here. So We've discovered something really cool recently, though. What you are looking at right now are planets orbiting another star. You're actually staring at one of those 250 billion stars. It's about 100 light years away. And those are planets going around. I love the scientists who made this. They put a black thing over the star so you could see the planets, but they put a little star on there so you could remember it was a star. That's nice. But anyway, so we can actually see now, because we're such clever naked apes, you know, we're the latest, cleverest thing on the planet. We can now, with our best telescopes, we can see planets going around other stars. And when you tally it all up, there, can you make that? Oh yeah, there we go. Hey, can you kill the sound on that, please? Anyway, we can make, we can see about 5,000 planets going around other stars. 5,000 of them. So we know for sure now, the big discovery recently is that every star out there has at least one planet around it. That's a huge discovery because people live on planets. Life lives on planets. So when you look at the entire universe, if you take like the James Webb Telescope and you point it into the darkest part of the sky, and it brings back an image like this, which is galaxies in the universe. Each one of those galaxies, hundreds of billions of stars, and now we know hundreds of billions of planets. How many planets are there in the universe? We actually know the answer to that question now because we can count the galaxies. And it's not a million or a billion or a trillion or a quadrillion or a quintillion or a sextillion. There are at least a septillion planets out there. Such a huge number, it may as well be infinite. So that begs the question, where are all the aliens? Right? If there are a septillion planets out there, are we alone or not? And maybe we could at least hear their radio broadcasts, right? Because we've been broadcasting from Earth here for a long time. You know, maybe they've been listening to Hockey Night in Canada out there because it goes out, radio waves go at the speed of light. And we've been broadcasting Hockey Night in Canada since 1931. And Marconi, I think he sent out his first radio broadcast in 1895. So surely we've been reaching out to life just as they're listening to, you know, Foster Hewitt call the game. But in fact, this is how far light has traveled since we invented the radio. I blew it up for you in the corner so you could see it. This tiny little blue dot. So we haven't, our radio broadcasts haven't gone anywhere yet. If we truly want to go look for life and explore the universe, we need a fast ship. And so this is like the fastest science fiction ship that we've come up with, or one of them, the USS Enterprise. And I don't know if you remember when Kirk, nice guy from Montreal, was sitting in the captain's chair and he'd go, "Scotty, warp factor 2. And like, why didn't they always go like warp 10 everywhere? Like, were they short on dilithium or something? Why didn't they just always go fast? But anyway, warp 2 or warp 5, Scotty. How fast is that? Well, warp 1 is the speed of light. 186,000 miles a second. Around the world, 7.5 times a second. But warp 2 isn't 2 times that. It's actually 2 cubed. So 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So it's warp 2 is 8 times the speed of light. Warp 3, 27 times the speed of light. So when things were really getting bad, when the Klingons and the Romulans were misbehaving, and today we got to go warp 10, Scotty. Captain, I can't hold out much longer. Anyway, warp 10. Well, how fast is like warp 9? Everything was always falling apart on the ship at warp 9. Warp 9 is 9 times 9 times 9, which is 729. 729 times the speed of light. How far did the USS Enterprise actually go? This far. That's it. It was only on a 5-year mission, right? That's as far as it got. If it had gone in a straight line at warp 9 for the entire life of it, it would have only gone that far in our galaxy. It would have taken 137 years at warp 9 without even stopping just to get across our galaxy once. So If we truly want to go explore and look for alien life somewhere else, we need to go even faster than that. But fortunately, there's some really smart people on Earth, like Miguel here, Alcubierre. He's from Mexico. He's studied all around the world. He is a theoretical physicist, and he's brought in a couple other really bright theoretical physicists who look a little crazy to me, actually. But hey, we don't want our theoretical physicists to be normal, right? We want them to be slightly crazy, and that's okay. Anyway, and they have come up with the Alcubierre drive, and they think that if you can distort space-time, then maybe you can sort of compress space-time in front of your ship and expand it behind your ship, and maybe, theoretically, it's possible to go faster than the speed of light. Maybe. And they might be right, but this is about as far as their ship design has got so far. So it's, you know, maybe eventually someday, but it's not coming anytime soon. So really, we have to solve the problems here and now while we're working on those long-term things. So I want to talk about my grandma. This is Mary Louise. Her maiden name was Hodgins. She married my grandpa, John T. Taylor. So she's Mary Lou Taylor. Mary Lou was a squared-away woman. She raised 4 kids on a farm, you know, before there was running water and electricity, and she was a school teacher as well. A great, impressive woman. And she lived to be almost 100. So let's say 100 years, that's sort of like one long lifetime. One Mary Lou Taylor, one grandma, all right? So 100 years is one grandma. So one grandma ago was 1923. 2 grandmas ago was 1823. Just 2 human lifetimes ago. 2 grandmas ago, 1823. What was life like in 1823? In 1823, half of everybody died as a child. Half of everybody died before they reached adulthood. And in 1823, 90% of everybody lived in abject poverty over the entire world. We're down to less than 10% now, and childhood mortality is way down. We have made enormous changes in the quality of human life in just 2 grandmas. And we sort of forget just how fast that is. But 2 grandmas ago, there was this crazy, brilliant guy here. His name was James Watt from Scotland, sort of like the Elon Musk of his day. He invented how to stop having all work being done by humans and machines. He invented the steam engine. And it looks big and clunky. It's pretty simple. You just, that boiler on the left end, you make a bunch of heat in there. You burn coal or wood or peat or something. You boil water, the steam comes ripping out, and then you move that big rocker lever on the top, and then you can make a wheel go around. As soon as you can make a wheel go around, you can run machines. And that revolutionized everything. As soon as we could use human inventiveness to change who does the labor, suddenly it changed something that had been normal for 10,000 years. This is the number of people on Earth over the last 10,000 years, in billions. So for about 9,500 years, it was pretty much steady state, because 50% of everybody was dying as a child, and most people lived in abject poverty. But as soon as we invented cool technology so that we weren't always just barely making it, and then people like Edward Jenner invented the smallpox vaccine, suddenly our population could radically grow. And a lot of us would live closer to one full grandma with our lifetime. So what's going on? Is our population just going to continue to explode? Well, no. If you look at birth rate, death rate, and then total population, our birth rate has been plummeting since the 50s. Because if you know that half of your children aren't going to die, and if you don't need your children to be laborers just so that you can have a chance of success, then you don't need to have 15 children. And most women don't want to have 15 children. I mean, ask them, you know? And also, you know, a lot of women died in childbirth. I mean, it's a horrible thing trying to just pop out enough babies so our species can barely survive. And so our population rate has plummeted, our death rate is stabilized, and you can see where we are in the middle there. But when your death rate and your birth rate match, your population no longer grows, obviously. And we are going to peak out, by looking at our birth and death rates, at about 10 billion. We're at 8 billion now. So the big question of our age is, can this blue ball sustainably provide a good quality of life for 10 billion human beings? That is our big problem. That's why we're all here at Elevate. Can we continue to do what James Watt and Edward Jenner did and invent the technology that allows that many, oh, by the way, it's round. Just thought I'd point it out. So can we do that or not? Well, part of the problem is that we like to turn the lights on. You know, we like our houses to be warm. We like to live in comfort. You know, you want to live sustainably. You want to have as many people as possible live in a good quality of life. And so you need to use energy. That's a great shot. You can see where we are. There's Lake Michigan, Lake Erie. Over to the right, you can see Lake Ontario. You can see the lights of Toronto shining up. It's so beautiful on board a spaceship to be able to look and see that out your window, as I've been around the world 2,600 times. It's just so gorgeous. Oh, by the way, at the end of this, if anybody has any questions, we'll maybe save 5 minutes or so for some questions, and I'll try and answer them. But when we have 10 billion people, right now it's 8 billion people, you know, driving the cars, turning the lights on, flushing the toilet and such, it has a big impact on the world. Because for the last 10,000 years, there weren't very many of us. But now, because of our incredible inventiveness, we got a lot more people. And so we have taken the fourth biggest sea on Earth, the Aral Sea, and in one generation, we've turned it into a stinking little puddle. That's human decision-making, changing climate on an international scale in one generation. And think of what it's like for the regional climate there, for all the fish life and everything that relied on that, for the wind that used to pick up the moisture and dump it on the mountains downwind in Kazakhstan, the snowpack. I mean, it's huge change to climate just because of human bad decision making. Or you can look down, this is a picture I took of Australia from space, 400 kilometers up, and you can see the actual flames of the huge wildfires that were burning at the time that I was in space. So what can we do about it? First, we need energy. We need better ways to generate and store energy. We can't just use James Watt's, you know, burning coal and peat. It works great if there's not too many of us, but not for 10 billion sustainably. So ideas like General Fusion has out in British Columbia. Maybe we can make fusion work in the short term. I sure hope so. But even if you just use electricity, those red blocks there, that's if you went out in the Sahara Desert and you put up solar arrays. The small red block is what it would take to power Germany. The medium block is how many solar panels it would take to power all of Europe. The big red block is we could power the entire world with solar arrays taking that much land area. But obviously it's a little bit fake because what do you do at night? And also power distribution is really hard. How do you get the power from the middle of the Sahara to Meridian Hall? You know, you can't do it. But we're on our way. And to me, it's super important that the #1 best-selling car in the world this year is an electric car. That is a huge change. Even though right now we have crappy power storage, we have pretty bad power distribution, but at the same time, people recognize this is a technology that is better than the old technologies, and we are going to start adopting it. And it is going to drive then the demand for all those things to come underneath it. We need better power and power distribution. And like the previous speakers, what do we do with the artificial intelligence we've come up with? You know, if our birth and our death rate, this is, by the way, this is out in British Columbia. These folks at Sanctuary have built this robot, and it can do very delicate, beautiful things. If our birth and death rates match, then we no longer have a great big workforce of people, and so who's going to do all those things that we don't want to do? And it's sort of like 200 years ago, 2 grandmas ago, where We invented machines to relieve us from the drudgery of so much labor, and all sorts of people were up in arms that, oh, there won't be enough work for the 1 million of us on Earth. You know, we need to not accept this new technology. We absolutely need that type of technology if we are going to have a good quality of life once we get to a sustainable 10 billion. And can you put my next slide up here? Oh, here we go. There we go. Thank you. We need to change agriculture. My dad's a farmer. I grew up on a farm. We still grow crops essentially exactly the same way they did 10,000 years ago when they invented it in northern India. We dig a little furrow in the ground, and we put some seeds in there, and we cover it up. We maybe put some fertilizer in it. If you're Matt Damon on Mars, you use a slightly different type of fertilizer, and then you water it, and you hope it grows. My dad has a good crop of beans this year, but essentially it's the same. We can do better. If we're going to feed 10 billion people sustainably, we have to continue to advance agriculture, and we've got to figure out good health care for all 10 billion of us. But if we can provide health care to those of us remote and living on board a spaceship, then we can figure it out here on Earth. We just have to prioritize it and make it happen. Because life is the whole point. Life here on Earth. How can we do this? How can we provide a good quality of life for 10 billion people in a sustainable way? And life, this is the oldest fossil of life, the oldest evidence of life on Earth that we have ever found. It's from Australia, and it's of this a thing called a stromatolite. It's like slime that grows in the shallows. And this is me driving a submarine in a lake in British Columbia, where that same life is growing on the rocks, these stromatolites at the bottom of an alpine lake in British Columbia. And it's really cool to be able to go there because it's sort of like a spaceship thing, but also if we can find what allows those stromatolites to grow right now in British Columbia, then we can also have a kind of a glimpse into what the world was like when those first life rocks were laid down 3.5 billion years ago. And this is the history of life on Earth. We had nothing, those are billion years ago, Bia. For Bia, there was no life on Earth. But something, looking at the fossil record, 3.5 billion years ago, we had the very first cyanobacteria, and it's like green slime growing in those stromatolites. And then for 1.5 billion years, that was it. Huge number. And then something happened 1.5 billion years later, 2 billion years ago, where it went to a more complicated cellular organism, a eukaryotic cell, weird word, eukaryotic cells. And then for another 1.5 billion years, there was just single-celled organisms on Earth. And then something happened, if you give enough monkeys enough typewriters kind of thing, and suddenly we got to multicellular organisms, and that's all we are. We're just multicellular organisms. All of this has happened. That is the history of life on Earth. So, when I'm on board a spaceship and I'm looking out the window, that's what I'm thinking about. Looking at our world, trying to get a fundamental understanding of big numbers and trying to understand the history of where we live. And what I realized was, while I was on board the spaceship for 6 months, we went from one side of the solar system right around to the other, halfway around the sun. And what I was watching out the window was our world taking one breath out of 4.5 billion breaths. The incredible, refreshing natural cycle of our planet, cleansing itself and allowing to continue to build this amazing, rare environment in the universe that allows our complex life to be here. And so when I look at the universe, when I look at our galaxy, that's what I'm thinking about. When I look at us over here at the end and try and put myself into context, when I'm thinking about where are we and what are we looking for, that's what I'm looking at. I am thinking, how can we, as perhaps the only intelligent life, because through the history of the world, we know that life is common. But intelligent life is exceedingly rare. And self-aware, exploratory, and responsible intelligent life, this may be the first time that has ever happened in the history of our planet. And it might be the only case of it happening. Everywhere else, they just have green slime. You know, we may be the only place in our galaxy that has got to this particular rare set of circumstances. And that is what's on my mind when I'm thinking about the speed of light. Thanks. Okay. Thank you. Can you bring the house lights up a little bit, and I'll see if anybody has a question. If you have a question, stick your hand up, and well, there's lots of questions. Yes, sir. What's your question? Say it loud. So he said so far in my first book, that one in the middle, Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth, I epitomize the idea of chasing excellence. And what's your question? What advice would I give you to keep in mind when you're tackling your careers based on chasing excellence? Yes. Okay. Okay, number one is be passionate about the things that are important to you. Find out what in life you are truly excited about. And it doesn't have to matter to anybody else. Nobody else needs to care what you're excited about. But do yourself the favor of actually going, you know, what are the things that I think are the most, and I don't just mean the transitory things, just stimulating your nerve endings, but actually, if your life goes perfectly, what will you be able to see and do and accomplish? What might you be able to make of yourself? I think you need to go through that experiment internally on a relatively often recurring basis with yourself. And then, once you've said, gosh, the stuff I'm most interested in is this and this and this and this, these are the things I'd love to have happen, then start working on those things. Start going, okay, well, what can I learn about those? How can I start changing who I am? What can I do this week to learn more about those? And how can I maybe find work in those areas? Even though it won't be a direct path to my dreams, then at least I'm working in the field that fundamentally is in my heart. And listen to yourself, because those tastes will change over your life. And it won't go as you plan. You know, if you want to hear the gods laugh, tell them your plans, right? But if you every single day are making decisions that hurt, your life is just a big flock of sheep racing in all the different directions. But you've got these upper meadows you're trying to get to. And I find my whole life is just trying to help move this big fractious herds of sheep up into the upper meadows of my dreams in my life. And there are going to be huge setbacks and all sorts of other demands. But to me, that is the most important thing, is to be always changing yourself, improving yourself, purposefully, deliberately modifying who you are so that you have a greater and greater chance to have as much of the stuff you dream of in your day-to-day life as possible. Any other questions? Yes, right there. Cool. What's your question? What's it like to make an Earth to space concert? Cool. So I've been a musician my whole life. Miss Soren taught me to play trombone when I was in high school. Thank you, Susie Soren. I appreciate it. And my mom is a good musician because my grandma, Mary Louise, she made sure all her kids learned music. And I've always played guitar. And so just because we leave Earth doesn't mean we stop being artists or creators. Or we sure need culture and art, even more so when we're further from home. And so there's a guitar up on the space station. It's put there by the psychiatrists because they recognize how important art and music are just for fundamental human health. And so with that guitar up there, I wrote music. You can't barely see it, but in the top left, I wrote a whole album of music, did a David Bowie tune. I worked with kids across Canada. One day, I did a thing with Music Monday with the Coalition for Music Education, where a song that Ed Robertson of the Bare Naked Ladies and I wrote, I did it live with 700,000 kids simultaneously. Because it sort of goes back to your question, sir. And that is, first, people need to realize something might be barely possible to inspire them. And then they need to see that they could change who they are to be part of that. And then they need to feel the excitement of that happening. And to have 700,000 kids at home practicing and learning this song, and then on this one day with me, with my mustache and everything else, up there on the space station, playing this song. When else can you get 700,000 students simultaneously together to be creating and sharing in the joy of cooperation and a vision of the future? So to me, that's what being on board a spaceship felt like. I'm done. Thank you very much, folks.